you are starting or growing a nonprofit organization, you truly know how vital it is to have an amazing board of directors. You need strong board leaders who can get out there and fundraise and do outreach and govern and create strong policies for the organization and so much more. In this video, I'm going to talk through 6 questions that you all had about the board of directors and see what you think. Welcome back. I'm Amber Melanie Smith. I'm a nonprofit founder and executive director. I make these videos here on YouTube to help people who want to create an impact like you. As always, I hope that you find this useful. Don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. I also have a website, foundertofulltime.com, where I have trainings and resources for people starting a nonprofit or developing that ever important strategic and sustainable fundraising plan. So go check that out there. I wanted to do this topic because nonprofits are pretty different from a for-profit business structure, and the nonprofit board of directors can be one of the most confusing elements of the whole thing. I get lots of questions about how boards work all the time. Now, the questions that I chose to focus on for this video center around 2 themes that are generally the same 2 themes I see in questions I didn't address too. And that is, 1, how do you recruit how do you recruit board members? And secondly, what powers and privileges do they have? This is part 3 of the little series I've been doing answering your questions, and I hope that you've been enjoying these. Let's get into it. Question number 1 is from Jal. Jal says, how many board members should be in a nonprofit organization? Well, this answer is going to widely vary depending on where you're located. So if you are in the United States, then the rules for the minimum number of board members you need to have could vary even by state. So you're really going to want to look in the rules of the state that you're incorporating your nonprofit in to identify. But as a rule of thumb, many or possibly even most states are going to ask you to have at least 3 board members. And these board members need to be unrelated according to the IRS rules. Unrelated means they're not your family. They're not related to you by marriage or through business contracts or connections. Now, you could have some board members who are related to you by marriage or family, etc., as long as combined you all don't make up the majority of the board. And the reason for that is the IRS wants to make sure that a nonprofit is formed to be led by representatives from the community at large. And so it doesn't want to see a controlling interest in a nonprofit. It wants to be for the public, by the public, etc. The second question I have here is from Donna M. Donna asks, I have a question, Miss Amber. Who pays the board of directors? Now, this is something I have addressed in some other videos, but as a general rule of thumb, board of directors members are unpaid volunteers. I've talked previously about some of the differences between the nonprofit structure and the for-profit business structure, but this is one of the major ways that they are different. Board members in a nonprofit are unpaid volunteers, community representatives, etc. And the organization is not supposed to be divvying out profits to shareholders or board members like you might see in a for-profit business. So that is the answer to that question. Board members are generally unpaid volunteers. However, there are some small ways they might be able to be reimbursed. For example, if they spend money on some approved expenditure for the organization and it's the expense itself has been approved, they could be reimbursed for that. They might be able to receive mileage for travel to some situations based on your organization's policy around mileage reimbursements. And in some cases, they might also be able to be hired to provide a specific service not related to their board service. So let's say they also happen to be a professional photographer and your organization has done its due diligence agents to vet a handful of photographers, and your board member, who is the photographer, happens to be offering the best price, you all could reasonably choose to hire that person for that service instead of others. But the idea with nonprofits is you're not supposed to have conflicts of interest where board members would be personally or inappropriately benefiting financially from the nonprofit. All revenue for the nonprofit needs to go right back into its mission and not distributed to shareholders, etc. All right, question number 3 is from Leah M. Leah asks, when someone's board term limit is up, can they be reselected for the same position again, or does it have to be a completely different person? For instance, can they be elected again to fill the role if everyone is happy with that current board member, or is that illegal or frowned upon? Good news, Leah, you can absolutely do this. It's all about what rules you all have put in your bylaws and what the board votes on wanting to do. So you could, in theory, say board members can have up to 3 terms. Like maybe a term is 2 years and they can be reelected 3 times. You could have that in your bylaws. You could have unlimited terms. You could have 1 term. The number of terms and what length the term is going to be is up to you all to decide and to write in your bylaws. Now, I will say sometimes if you have unlimited board terms and it's just the same people over and over again, that might look a little unhealthy to funders or donors, because the idea with the nonprofit, as I've been saying, is you really want it to be representative of the community that you're serving. So if you always have the same people in there all the time, then you're not getting any fresh ideas in there and you're not seeing a lot of community representation, possibly. Yeah, and the second part is about voting. So as long as everyone's happy with that board member, they have to run again, and then they have to be voted in again for their second term. And if everyone votes, or your majority votes to bring them on, depending on what your bylaws say counts as a majority, then there's no problem with them serving again. Question number 4 is from Muyad. Asks, hi Amber, who has the power to fire or remove unwilling board members? This kind of relates to the question I just answered, and that is the board. The board is the answer to the question. The board has to fire or vote out, in other terms, board members who are not working out. So if your bylaws say that in order to bring on or remove a board member, you need to have a 2/3 vote of your board vote yes for that, then that's what you need to do. This is going to be dictated by your organization's bylaws. Question number 5 is from Lighthouse Audio Ministries. I'm not sure if you have a video for this, how to find the right board members for your cause. I do, definitely. Check out my board of directors playlist. I have videos all about recruiting and having good board meetings and all sorts of things. What are your tips for convening with them and inviting them to be a part of the board? How do you persuade them? What works and what doesn't? So there are a couple of things that are going to go into successfully recruiting a board member. The first is you've got to know what kind of board member you need before you start recruiting any board members at all. So what are the different skill sets your organization is really going to need to carry it towards its goals for that next year or 2-year period or 3-year period? Maybe it's you really need more people with fundraising skills, or you really need a good public speaker, or you need an accountant or someone with financial background. You've got to know the type of person you need first. Then you got to have a clear board job description, because it is very unlikely that someone is going to sign up to make a long-term commitment, as board commitments typically are, without knowing exactly what is required of them. I wouldn't sign up for something where I didn't know what my responsibilities were, because I want to do a good job and I want to meet expectations. So making sure that those expectations, the responsibilities are very clearly laid out in a description. before you start recruiting is going to help you. You also want to have your process for recruiting figured out. So are you screening them in some way? Is there an interview process? What does it look like? And being clear about what it looks like to your potential candidates. At this point, you have all these tools ready and you're ready to go out and start doing some outreach and recruiting. Let's say you've decided that the particular skill set you need is marketing. Well, you want to go where you might find people who have that skill set. So think of marketing networking groups or companies who specialize in marketing or public relations. Maybe some of their employees or leadership wants to serve on your board. So that would be the path I would take. And then it's just a matter of reaching out to them, having some one-on-one conversations, maybe even having like an open house question and answer session where people can ask you questions before they apply to be on the board. All of these things will help clarify what is expected of board members so that people will feel more comfortable applying. Sixth and final question for today is from Dawn. Dawn says, I'm in the beginning stages of starting a nonprofit. As far as putting a board together, do they go through an interview process? And do you have a video about board member descriptions? I do have such a video. If you go to my playlist for board of directors topics, then you can see some stuff about putting together those board job descriptions that I also just mentioned for the other question too. And the interview process is something I also mentioned in the other response too. And I recommend it. I think that you definitely don't want someone serving on your board that you haven't gotten to know at least a little bit, that you haven't had some human interaction with. So I do highly recommend an interview process. Are you required to have one? No, that's up to you. But I think if you're talking about someone whose vote is going to possibly change the trajectory of your organization's work over the next couple of years, you definitely want to know a little bit about their values and who they are as a person before you bring them in. Okay, what did you think? Did the questions you had about board members get answered? If not, what other questions do you have? Definitely share those in the comments below. As always, I love to read what you all have on your minds and answer when I can. As I mentioned before, I have my website, foundertofulltime.com, with those online trainings and resources for people starting a nonprofit or developing that sustainable fundraising plan. I also have a newsletter that I send out to changemakers and nonprofit leaders. You can find the link to opt into that in the description below this video, but I'll send out things like news and trends and funding opportunities and stuff like that. Finally, I have a group on Facebook called Change the World or Bust, and it's got thousands of people in there from all around the world talking about how they're making an impact and asking questions. So I hope that you can join us there. Once again, I'm Amber Melanie Smith. I hope that you found this interesting and helpful, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.